Are you on Facebook? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But this needs to be closer. Um, this we could have an idea. I don't have a pocket. Is this gonna look funny?
No, no, okay. You always follow devices.
It'll look funny, but it'll sound good. Haribol.
Would it be difficult to attach it somewhere here?
We can. It's just the further away it is, the worse it sounds.
Okay.
But you can. Yeah, she had it attached. Yeah, we can. Omagyanatimirandasya gyananjana Surum militam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanamano Vishtam Stapitam jena Bhutale Shayam Rupakaramayam Daratisha Padantikam. So, when we left off last week, we were describing the external symptoms of bhava. You have internal symptoms? Does anyone remember the external symptoms? Not the...
Crying.
No. Those are the internal symptoms.
Internal, it's not external.
Those are the emotions.
Yeah.
The external are the activities.
Oh, I see.
In other words,
Talking only about Krishna, can stop, talk about Krishna, always looking for Krishna, reading, chanting his names.
you have to write your own nectar of devotion. Humility is one. Always chanting is one. Never wasting time is one. Detachment is one. Let's see if I can find the list. Does anybody out there remember? What we had discussed last week was it last week? Or week before last? No, last week. You have symptoms. You have symptoms of bhava, which manifest as what we call the sattvika bhavs, ashta sattvika bhavs, 8 symptoms of ecstasy. And that's what you were describing. Do you need translation? No. You can translate? No. Oh, okay. So, and then we described, you remember we described that these symptoms can be imitated, or someone can act them out. And then you have symptoms which can't be imitated. These are in the form of actions, not emotions. Maybe. Still. This is what they do in the movies, right? But you don't see it in the movies, right? Actually, yeah. Unless it's right here, I don't know. How do they do it in the movies? I'm trying, but that's the only thing that works. Well, everyone, you'll just have to see me shining. So, it's okay. It's just, never mind. So, Haribol. And then there are symptoms that you can't imitate, which are natural symptoms of one who's advanced. Like, you can't fake being detached for very long, right? You can't fake humility for very long. these are things you would have to, you couldn't consistently be detached or humble or always chanting. That's one symptom, you're always chanting. So how could you fake that? And you're always utilizing your time. That means you would never do anything other than what's Krishna conscious. How can you fake that? You can't fake that.
Not chanting, you can fake.
But always chanting and never wanting to stop. So let me read the symptoms again. The first symptom is forgiveness. You could fake any of these temporarily, but you can't fake them permanently. Concern that time shouldn't be wasted, detachment, absence of false prestige. That's hard to fake. Hope, eagerness, taste for chanting. Yeah, then you were right. Attachment to the descriptions of the transcendental qualities, affection for those places where the Lord resides. And then these are called anubhava. Anu means to follow. So there are 8 emotions, and these follow in actions. Should I read it again? Forgiveness. Shantir, avyarta kalatvam, time shouldn't be wasted. Viraktir, detachment. Manasunyataha, the mind. Manasunyataha, how is that translated? Oh, mana, not mind. Mana means prestige. No false prestige. Ashabanta, great hope. Samukanta, eagerness. Namagana sadaruchi, always chanting, a ruchi for chanting. Asaktis, affection, attachment for the places where the Lord has His leelas and His transcendental qualities. No. Attachment to the descriptions of the qualities and a love for the place where the Lord had His leela. So then we discussed that sometimes you see these qualities exhibited in someone who's not on the stage of Bhava. Right? This battery is going to die.
That one, we can change.
We can change.
This one.
Okay.
What's that?
We're going to change. And I take... Well, let's see how far we get. Keep your eye on it. There's one line left. When that line is finished...
How many batteries there? 2 like this?
Yeah, it takes 2. When that line is finished, then we'll... Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, yeah. So you see devotees sometimes, they're detached. You see devotees who utilize all their time. You see devotees who like to chant. You see devotees who like the holy dham. You see devotees who are humble. So then you might think, well, this almost sounds like it's describing a good sadhaka. It's said here it's describing someone in the stage of bhava. But a lot of these sound like, don't they sound like descriptions of just good devotees? Yeah? Taste for chanting, taste for hearing the leelas, you like to go to class, you're a humble person. So, when one is on the stage of bhava, they have all 10 at the same time in full. So it's not just, hey, I had a good japa day today, I must be exhibiting symptoms of bhava. And not only that, I didn't waste time and I only ate one meal, so maybe I'm on the stage of bhava. So when they're all exhibited and they're constant, they're not wavering, then you're on the stage of bhava. So before we come to the stage of bhava, we may have these symptoms, but they won't be steady and probably not all at the same time. Right?
Are there devotees in ISKCON like this?
Who have all at the same time? You have to judge. But if there are, because they're humble, they won't say they are. Now, the most interesting thing is if you study this, you can see, okay, let's say even if you found someone with these qualifications, if they're on the stage of Bhava, they'd also have to have the Ashtaka Sattvika Bhavas at the same time. So, they hear about Krishna Lila, they think about Krishna, and they exhibit ecstatic symptoms. And if they're on the stage of Bhava, they understand their relationship with Krishna. And basically they can't stop chanting. And they're completely detached because they realize their relationship with Krishna. That's a pretty elevated stage. If you understand your relationship with Krishna, if it's revealed to you, you'll become detached from this world. Right? Because what in this world is going to compare to that? Anything? Of course not. So what's interesting is that Prabhupada said there were some devotees that had bhava. Chamuna had bhava. There was another devotee named Shilavati, and she was a pujari. Prabhupada said she had bhava. But I think there's a difference between having it and being on the stage of bhava. So she had emotion in relation to the deity, or emotion in relation to chanting, or was experiencing deep feelings for Krishna. But to be on the stage of Bhava, that's what's described here. But anyway, Prabhupada was often very generous. So sometimes he would say, my disciples are pure devotees. So he sometimes said some disciples had bhava. That's amazing, isn't it? And we had discussed this before, and what we had said is that bhava exists in all levels of bhakti. So to say someone has bhava is not incorrect, because you have bhava even from the beginning. Ado shraddha, there's bhava there. This bhava means emotion. It also means attachment. And then sometimes you see there's a lot of attachment for the guru. So Prabhupada said they had bhava. But here's describing the full state of bhava. Right? You have all symptoms of ecstasy, 8 symptoms of ecstasy, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 external symptoms that show up in your actions, in full all the time. And so, what we discussed in the last class, why is it all the time? And why don't we experience deep feelings all the time? Or sometimes we get realization. Why doesn't that realization continue? Why does it come and go? Why some days I'm detached, some days I'm not? Some days I'm more inspired than others. So, it was described that when you're in the stage of bhava, there are no modes of nature. Just imagine what your life would be like if there were no material modes of nature affecting you. It'd be pretty good, right? No lust, anger, greed, envy. No impulse for anything other than loving Krishna. So, in the stage of bhava, now you're controlled by Krishna's Sarup Shakti, his internal potency. Just as now, we're controlled by the external potency. When we're not engaged in service, we're controlled by the external potency. Or even when we're engaged in service, sometimes we're controlled by the external potency. Right? Like you might do service, but you think, hey, look at me, I'm giving class. No one's as smart as I am. Nobody can give class like I am. So now I'm in the mode of ignorance, being affected by ignorance while I'm giving class, because I become proud. So even while doing devotional service, I can be influenced by the modes of nature. But in the stage of bhava, there's no influence of the modes of nature. So that's why it's constant. There's nothing blocking it. So to say someone's in the stage of bhava That means they're transcendental 24/7. And their attraction to Krishna is so intense that it manifests ecstasy. Even on the stage of a sakti, which is called attachment, the attachment is not strong enough to produce ecstasy. So even on that stage, ecstatic symptoms don't manifest. And it's not completely out of the modes of nature. So when you make that shift to further attachment, then the attraction increases. Then, because of that attraction, there's ecstatic symptoms. And then your activities become transcendental. There's no modes of nature. Then you exhibit these 9 symptoms constantly and simultaneously. And until we come to this stage, we will exhibit these symptoms, but unlikely, constantly and simultaneously. Does that make sense?
Actually means to be controlled by Krishna's Swarup Shakti.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
The Sarup Shakti is the modes of nature are the perversions of the Sarup Shakti. So it means there's no ignorance, there's no misery, and there's no death. Samvit Ladini and Samvit Ladini and Sandini. It means that the energy, all the energies just bring you to Krishna. It's like Maya, the modes of nature bring you away from Krishna. And the Swarup Shakti brings you to Krishna. Just like we've talked before, right? Yoga Maya, Mahamaya. Mahamaya brings you away, Yoga Maya brings you closer. That's the function. So the function of the Swarup Shakti is to bring you closer. Function of Mahamaya is to bring you further away. And why does Mahamaya exist? It exists for people who want to be away from Krishna. And then you say, well, I don't want to be away from Krishna anymore. But after cultivating material life for so long, we're naturally being influenced by those. Those modes are within us. So now you become a devotee and you don't want those modes. And you get out of those modes when you're doing kirtan, when you're chanting, when you're hearing. And when all that stops, then the modes, they'll affect you according to your conditioning. So someday, when those modes no longer affect us, that's called bhava. And a sakti, very little effect. Ruchi, very little effect. Nishta, not so much. Anartha nivritti, in the middle, getting rid of them. Bhajana kriya, struggle. Bhajana kriya is like a little bit like a yo-yo. The yo-yo stage of bhakti. Some days are good and some days are not good. You know, one day I'm going to take sannyas. The next day, maybe I should get married. That's bhajana kriya. Then I get married. Then the next day, maybe I should have taken sannyas. 2 weeks later, I'm going to take sannyas. And on the way to taking sannyas, I fall in love with another woman and get married. That's the bhajana kriya stage. You've experienced that? Something like that? So what's happening is like there's this sentiment inside. I hear a class, I'm with a Maharaj, and I get inspired. It's like, yeah, let's do it, let's go for it. But I'm conditioned, so I have to deal with my modes. So that's called conditioned life. And as you progress up the different stages of bhakti, you're coming closer to Krishna, which means there's more attraction to Krishna, and that's happening because there's more purification. And as there's more purification, there's less influence of the modes of nature. And then in prema, there's nothing, there's no contamination. Every trace of any offense or past sin or previous contamination is finished. And so our understanding is that when a devotee reaches the level of bhava, then he can, after he leaves the body, he can join Krishna Lila. And then in Krishna Lila, he can be trained and go from bhava to prema. And then when he achieves prema, he goes back to Krishna. And once having gone, one never comes back again. Unless you want to come and preach. So, the Bhoma Lila, where Krishna is engaging in pastimes, we get to join that Lila and become purified of any trace of contamination and get trained. And when we're qualified, there's no contamination of anything material, then we're qualified to join Krishna Lila. If there's contamination of something material, we're not qualified. And we'll only become qualified by mercy. And this understanding of the different stages, they're landmarks on the way to kind of evaluate where I'm going and what's next. And it's not so black and white because you evolve gradually. So the higher level of one stage and the lower level of the next stage, they're very similar. It's because it's a continuum. And it's also wise for us and good for us when we think we're up here and one day we end up down here, to realize that up here was mercy, down here is more or less where I live. And that when I'm up here, not to think that this is actually who I am. It's who I am if I stay up here. That's how you know you hit the next level, because now you're staying there. But when you get up here, and a week later you're down here, it's just a revelation, that's actually where you are, and up here is just due to your effort and mercy, you're able to live on a little higher level, but your real level is more like this. But when you get up here and it's steady, now you know you're on a different level. That's how you know you've come to a, let's say, a level of steadiness, nishta. You're just not yo-yoing anymore. You know, you're pretty steady. You're not so attracted by things you used to be attracted to. So that's called nishta. Anartha nivritti, you're not battling like you were on the stage of bhajana kriya. You're still a little up and down, but there's not as much attacking you as there was before. And with each stage, your faith is getting stronger. Your emotion and attraction is getting stronger. So when you finally switch over into bhava, you're actually out of the material world at that point. So then it's in that stage, now you begin to understand your relationship with Krishna. As we discussed before, in the stage of a sakti, at least in the stage of a sakti, you're pretty sure what rasa you're in, but you don't know who you are in that rasa. You're pretty sure you're a coward boy, or a gopi, or a manjari, or a mother, or a servant. That's a sakti. And the sakti means attachment. In that stage, you have a strong inclination for a particular rasa. And that's a stage in which one, in our line, would naturally want to practice Raganuga Bhakti because you're very certain about your relationship. And you'd want to follow in the footsteps of the leading devotees in that relationship. But when you come to the stage of bhakti, then that's revealed. Not what your relationship is, but who you are in that relationship. And what your service is. Wouldn't that be amazing? To realize I'm not actually a DT Dasi, a German, this age, this gender, this height, this weight. I'm not, what's your name? Mikolova?
Anastasia.
I'm not Mikolova Anastasia. I'm actually so-and-so manjari, and my service is to make cow dung patties, or whatever, yeah. That's like amazing.
Sure you don't want it?
I just ate, so.
No.
No, it's okay. So in a sakti, you only have the inclination, but in bhava, you actually know who you are. This is who I am, this is my name, my age, my service. So now, there's a controversy. That wakes you up, right? That word controversy, did it wake you up? You like controversies? What's the real answer to the controversy?
That's interesting.
How does this relationship with Krishna, how do you understand who you are? Do you get it from a guru? Do you get it from a mantra? Does it awaken naturally? Yeah, different acharyas say different things. Now what's interesting about this is if you read commentaries, even if you maybe hear some gurus from different Gaudiya Sampradayas or Sri Sampradayas or others, some Gaudiya Sampradayas, they'll say one thing. Prabhupada will say another thing. Acharyas may say one thing. So, this is interesting because you might be in Lowy Bazaar at Bihari Lal's bookshop and get a book and read it. You see, right here it says that you get this mantra and the mantra awakens your rasa. And it's right there, you know. Jiva Goswami said it. So then it seems bona fide. So when there's controversy, you have to understand what Prabhupada said. And sometimes Prabhupada might say something representing a certain idea that's not represented by every acharya. Correct? Is that correct? It's correct. So as followers of Prabhupada, it's our duty to understand what he said, even though other acharyas may have said other things, or other Gaudiya gurus have said other things. Actually, I was listening to, I'm not sure who he was, I think he was a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, or a disciple of a disciple, and he was explaining this, how you realize your relationship with Krishna. And he was explaining it exactly in the opposite way Prabhupada explains it. Entirely opposite. 180-degree opposite. That it's not revealed, it's given to you by your guru. And then Prabhupada didn't explain that. So, I think we can discuss that. You want to discuss that? Is your relationship revealed from outside or from inside?
So he said it was from outside.
From inside. Yeah. Through the Guru's mercy, from inside, through the Maha Mantra. Okay.
But Guru should know that and confirm it or no? Or not?
Doesn't have to, because it'll be revealed.
Oh, okay.
In other words, the question is it inherent, or do you get it from outside? Is your relationship inherent, and it just awakens through the practice, or does the Guru give it to you from the outside?
Depending on which sampradaya you belong.
In Sahaja's practice they give it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to read some things Shivaram Swami said. That way, if you don't like what's said, you can argue with him instead of me. Our acharyas, I'm only joking, but I am protected by the book. But I've read this, and I think this is I think it's an example that we can apply to many things, that there may be many controversies, but we always have to understand it through what Prabhupada said. Just like, if you read the Nectar of Devotion, there's a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he said, it seems what he said is that your rasa will depend on who you're associating with. So if you're associating with devotees in Madhurya Ras, you'll develop that. If you associate with devotees in Sakya Rasa, you'll develop that. It's what it seems like he said, but it's not exactly what he said. But it seems like it. So if you don't understand what Prabhupada said, you would misunderstand it. What the understanding is, that you'll be influenced in that way, but it won't change your rasa. You'll feel an attraction until your rasa is fully developed. You might feel an attraction for a particular rasa because you're with people in that rasa. But your rasa is fixed, so you won't. It's not going to change it. So the question is it fixed or does it change? Now Prabhupada said it could change. He said we all have a rasa, and so Prabhupada's saying according to tattva, it could change, but that's just a spiritual principle. It's dynamic, but generally that's not what happens. So let's read. Our acharyas, especially Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, were ever vigilant to root out the slightest hint of deviation in their followers. This is really important. I'm going to read that again and I'm going to tell you a story. Our acharyas, especially Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, were ever vigilant to root out the slightest hint of deviation in their followers. So, I asked Hari Sari, I think it was Hari Shori. I asked him, what upset Prabhupada the most? Anyone want to guess what upset Prabhupada the most? Don't read his books? Close. What upset him the most would result from not reading his books. That's a hint. And I just read something, that's also a hint. Philosophical deviation. Said, what upset, I forget, I either asked him, what upset Prabhupada the most or what concerned Prabhupada the most? He said, philosophical deviation. That was what concerned. This philosophical deviation could take the whole movement away from parampara, siddhanta. So he was very careful, Prabhupada. You could see 50 books, and in those 50 books, he's making 10 points, and he has to write 50 books just because we're so stupid to get the 10 points clear? Isn't it? It's really, he's not making that many points when it comes down to it. So I think that's very, very interesting, very important that he said his biggest concern was philosophical deviation. And that's what Maharaj is saying here. They wrote profusely and spoke out strongly against the imaginary cultivation of Siddha Deha, condemning the Sahajiya Babajis who make a profession of alluring the ignorant into deviant practices. Siddha Deha means I will tell you what your rasa is, and then you begin practicing. So, we have this funny story. This one devotee, he was acting like a peacock. I don't know what he was doing, I didn't see him. And you could imagine. Maybe he was squatting down and said, Prabhu, what are you doing? He said, I went in Radhakund and they gave me my Siddha Deha that I'm a peacock in Krishna Lila. So I'm practicing now. So that's what Prabhupada's talking. That's what Prabhupada's talking about.
But why do I know a few ISKCON devotees at Radhakund who are practicing the Siddha Deha, and they got from some Babas, they got the Siddha Deha, and they always tell when I'm there, why you don't come, you have to make advancement.
Okay, I'll tell you a story. I think I told you this story before. This is such a great story. And this was a conversation that was going on between some devotees who were part of the Gaudiya Math. A lot of them were ISKCON devotees who went to the Gaudiya Math, and they were discussing what is Gopi Bhav, Gopi Prema. Because Gopi Bhav, Gopi Prema, that's the highest love. and they were discussing, and they were going back and forth. And Achyutananda, we're still going to do the Mridanga lesson. It's going to happen. He got trained up by Madhava, so now he's going to teach me all the beats. All the cool beats. So I'll be the coolest Mridanga player in Mayapur. This is my ultimate goal of life. Then I'll get some earrings and a few tattoos. I'll be the man, right? So, so they're having this discussion, what is Gopi Prema? Because in this particular organization, they felt that whatever Prabhupada gave, we need to take it up to the next level and, nourish it. And this is really important to understand Raganuga Bhakti, which is important, and to understand Gopi Prema. So they're discussing, in very esoteric ways. And Achyutananda, he was one of the maybe first 5 or 10 devotees in ISKCON. He said, I'll tell you what Gopi Prema is. This is what Gopi Prema is. When you're 69 years old, and you risk your life to come to America to preach and have 2 heart attacks on the boat and preach to hippies and don't give up, that's Gopi Prema. You understand? That's the difference between Prabhu, come to Radhakund and we'll give you, and Prabhupada's mode. That's the difference. Now, I think I told you this story also. It's a very interesting story. I have a disciple who's married to a disciple of my godbrother, and they were moving from one temple to another, or another city. And in the area they're going, there are many Gaudiya Math movements. And they're relatively young devotees. So they're probably going to hear some things they haven't heard in ISKCON. So I asked Maharaj, did you tell anything to your disciple, just so when he hears these things, he knows, understands what they're teaching, where it's coming from, and so he's not confused. And he said, I will tell him that these are nice devotees, very advanced, very knowledgeable, and so on. But the main difference you will find between them and us is how they see Prabhupada. And I thought that was perfect. That is actually the main difference. And what Achyutananda Prabhu said, I think it illustrates that difference of how we see Gopi Prema and how they see it. Because Prabhupada always stressed, go out and give Krishna consciousness. That is in the mood of the gopis. And by doing that, Krishna will reveal your relationship. That's the best way to get it. And that's how you become dear to Krishna. So, now you might say, but there are other processes, and that's true. You could do it in other ways. So the controversy is twofold. Are there different ways? And even if you accept both ways, which way should we do it? So if we want to reduce the controversy, we'll say, okay, maybe some devotees were given a Siddha Pranali mantra, and they're rare souls, and they achieved their Siddha Deya through that. But then we could say, is that the way Prabhupada wanted us to do it? And we could say, are any of us qualified to do that? And the answer seems to be no, we're not qualified, and that's not the way he did it. Apparently, Bhaktisiddhanta was against this, but he did give Siddha Pranali to a few disciples. So we can, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. So you could say that process is a valid process, but Prabhupada didn't do it. So even though it's valid in some cases, he didn't do it. And what did Prabhupada do? Say, go out and save the world. That's what he wanted us to do.
Prabhupada did it once, no?
What?
Give Siddha Pranali.
No. He never gave it to anybody. If he wanted, he would have given it. He preached against it. Okay. They wrote profusely and spoke out strongly against the imaginary cultivation of Siddha Deha, condemning the Sahajiya Babajis, who make a profession of alluring the ignorant into deviant practices. To prevent such malpractice from entering ISKCON, Prabhupada encouraged his followers to follow the path of regulative devotion until their spiritual body was revealed from the infallible transcendental platform. So we're saying, when you come to the stage of bhava, it's revealed. So